He began his journalism career as a reporter for the Courier-Journal in Louisville, where he still lives with his wife and 3 children. He's won numerous awards, and he's been a journalist there at the paper, or was, for 17 years. And in 2004, he officially moved over to ESPN, and then in 2011 over to Yahoo Sports. His football editorial columns, 40-Yard Dash, and basketball editorial columns, 40 Minutes, have been must-reads for years. Please join me in welcoming the award-winning journalist, Pat Forde.
Thanks very much. Great to be here. I knew when I was packing for this trip, I didn't need to bring a tie because I knew who I was interviewing. The most casual coach in America, Mike Brey from Notre Dame.
Good to see you. Good to be with you. Good morning. Good to be with you.
I'm actually a little disappointed, Mike, that you didn't go with the Maui look with just the gym shorts and the T-shirt
Yeah.
that you coached in over there.
I swear they had a dress code out there this year after last year. I think they put a dress code in, but it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
It did. When was the last time you wore a tie?
You know, I wear the ties to funerals and my players' weddings.
Okay.
All right. So, and now when you're at a place 20 years like I've been, I've got a lot of players that are getting married, you know, so I'm having to break the tie out every now and then.
But not on the sidelines. Last time on the sidelines,
Been a
when you were
while.
in Delaware?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think just a little comfort and so I only have maybe 2 in stock in the closet.
Okay. One of the hallmarks, not only the way you dress on the sidelines, but your teams don't play uptight. I've been told, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a sign in the locker room that says, "Go to class, don't turn the ball over, we'll get along fine."
That is our big sign. I boiled my team meetings down to that. You know, the longer you coach, I said, you know, don't skip class, don't throw the ball away. You and I will get along just fine. So we try to keep it simple. And of course, last night we lost to a very good and older Oklahoma team, but I thought our young guys played and on that stage and under those bright lights. So, you know, something to build on. You know, you try to get guys to play. Can they play with a free mind? Can they play with not looking over at the bench, worried about if they make a mistake, they're going to be pulled out of the game or they're going to be jumped on? And so, you know, that's been something we've tried to evolve into. I think one of the themes I've really tried to evolve into the last 10 years is to really be a confidence giver with these young people. You know, how can you give confidence? And certainly I'm really challenged with this group because I've got a lot of young guys, and sometimes you're trying to find silver linings on performance when there aren't many, but you still got to find them with young guys. You still got to find them.
Sure. Well, you said that your teams play as loosely, I think, as anybody's, and you don't seem to be doing a lot of overcoaching from the sidelines. Why are there so many people in your profession who look uptight, who seem to coach uptight, and whose teams seem to play uptight?
Well, I have a pretty good contract, so that's one of the reasons I'm a little looser. Believe me, my first 2 or 3 years, you know, when you're trying to get that first extension, you know, you're a little different. You know, I think there's been a little shift in our profession where, you know, we are getting a little bit more, guys are letting young people play. And maybe that's evolving down from the NBA and you know, really good players are going to only go to programs where they're allowed to flow a little bit, that being on the offensive end and not be coached robotically. You know, that's an interesting dynamic in the midst of winning and wanting to keep your job and wanting to please, and yet being good with your guys and not uptight around them and not letting them feel it. I think that's the great challenge as the leader. You know, last night I was very anxious. I wanted our young guys to really do well on Broadway. Yep. And we didn't win, but we did some things where I think we can build on.
Yeah. I guess where is the balance then between overcoaching, undercoaching, and just letting guys go, letting them experience some mistakes and that sort of thing? Where do you?
Well, you know, I think we have there's the generation of players coming along now, you know, between all the TV they watch, all the NBA they watch, all the stuff they pull up on the computer, they know the scouting report on a team we're going to play before we talk about it, because they've pulled up breakdown tapes of the guard at UCLA, and they pull down, you know, so there's a basketball IQ and intelligence with this generation of kids where I think you got to give them a little credit and let them play a little bit, and then certainly let them kind of take ownership of their team. You know, I've been really blessed where I coach. You know, I've been there 20 years at Notre Dame, and I'm honored to be there. You know, we get a pretty sharp guy out there. We get a guy that, what I get a lot of time, I get a guy with a really high bar who wants to be a great player, and he doesn't want to get a B.
Yeah.
And so I got to keep him like, would you relax a little bit? You know, you got a C minus, and would you relax? You missed 2 shots in a row. Can you relax a little bit? I mean, and I say that at Notre Dame. I think a lot of this generation is like that. They just want it really so bad. They've had parents that maybe are more demanding than in the past. They've got trainers that they go home to in the summer, so they're answering to a lot of people. And you know, can you get them? I think what I've tried to, can you get them to enjoy the journey? Sure. Can you enjoy the journey with this thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's interesting you bring that up. I want to touch on it briefly. Just, do you see parents maybe over-parenting or over-pushing their kids with sports and trying to do too much in terms of, like you said, specialization or strength coach, conditioning coach, that sort of thing? What are you seeing as far as youth sports and the way that parents are involving themselves in that?
Well, I do know that my next coaching job is going to be at an orphanage, and you know, I see Jeff Hathaway here, was my classmate at DeMatha, and Morgan Wooten, who I was so blessed to be around as a high school player and then worked with him, used to say, and it was a true story, his first coaching job was his favorite, St. Joe's Orphanage. You know, he didn't have Jimmy's dad waiting on him to talk about playing time, you know, afterwards all the time. There's a very engaged parent now. There is no question about it. They are watching film, they are comparing. That is a big, big part of the equation and how we manage them, myself and our coaching staff. I mean, I try to make sure our staff checks in with the parents once every 2 weeks. Just let's make a phone call and
really?
and just touch base, and certainly sometimes the parents call you. But I think it's a big part of wanting to know how to manage the young man, the young person, knowing maybe what's being heard from home and what the tone is coming from the house. I think that's all part of the growth of the kid.
Sure. It's interesting that you guys reach out to the parents, because I've seen some college situations where it's pretty well actively discouraged for the parent, you know, for the parents to back off when the kid gets to college and let the coaches deal with them, the players directly. But you want to be involved.
Yeah, I try to get away from that myself, you know, and it's an interesting dynamic, because in the recruiting process, certainly you develop a great relationship with the parents. And in a lot of ways at our institution, the parents see Notre Dame as the option maybe a little bit before the kid does. And we certainly use that to our advantage to try and close the deal out. But after we get them, then I've got to wean myself off them a little bit and let the assistants, you know, handle them. But I just think there's got to be communication, because there's, you know, that voice is there with that young man, you know, maybe almost daily by way of text or those type of things. There's just heavy communication there, and it's part of the development of them.
Yeah. Okay. One more basketball question, then we're going to get into some bigger issues, state of the game sort of thing. But when did you guys first go to the four out, spread the floor, one in, and were you the Warriors before the Warriors?
Yeah, we were doing it pretty early. There's no question about it, Pat. We were. I mean, you know, it was. You know, I think I had a young man by the name of Rob Kurz from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who was the first stretch four man who could step out and face the bucket, and it opened the floor up. and it really gave us great spacing, and that's really kind of, you know, how we've tried to play, you know, since then, or maybe 12, 13 years ago, and we've had good success with it. This group, being younger, is really trying to find itself offensively right now, but it's a fun way to play. I think it's an efficient way to play, and it's a great system to recruit to. I mean, you know, kids want to play this way. You know, when you're recruiting, you know, kids want to see the style of play and how are we going to play, and that floor being open and good spacing and kids being able to drive it and shoot it and play with a free mind, I think is a selling point.
Is it funny now to see so many teams playing that way?
It really is, to see, you know, the spacing and the spreading and the ball screening and the rolling down the middle of the floor. I mean, it is, you know, we had a hard time guarding it for stretches last night, and we were guarding stuff we do every day in practice against Oklahoma last night. So it's really kind of been the way teams are playing. And again, I think it's an attractive style of play. It's an attractive style of play for your fans. Fans want to see, you know, the ball move and the ball go in the hole, and certainly the recruiting part of it is as well. And I think kids get better. I mean, I've found in our system, guys kind of get better because they're able to do a little more every year, and there's a little freedom to play in that system. Just keep the floor spaced.
Yeah. Okay. Well, over the last 14 months or so, college basketball's taken a bit of a beating. And you've been one of the truth tellers when people ask you questions about it. How would you characterize the state of college basketball right now?
We are still digging ourselves out of a hole. I mean, we have taken a big punch. You know, Pat, I feel we're actually actively now talking about and moving in the direction to try and help some things. We've always had this underworld in our sport, and we all know it in this room. It has now been thoroughly thrown out there, and even more to come, and I think that's good. My feeling is, let's get it all out. Let's flush it all out. But in the midst of this, can we be supportive of some of the movement here to try and fix some things? And we are not going to do it in a year or two. This is going to happen over time. But I feel we're talking about some things that can really improve the situation. And we're not going to know it in a short term, but I think down the road we're going to see some changes at it. But the midst of it, obviously, we still have ongoing trials. We still have the NCAA to get involved. I think for our sport, let's just get it all out and let's take our medicine. Let's take it like a man and move on and try and work with some of these things that Condoleezza Rice's commission has suggested, and by way of the NABC, let's move in that direction and try and improve some things.
Yeah. Okay. Collectively, that's, I think, the sentiment. But individually, are people taking their medicine? To the best of my knowledge, since all of this blew up, we've had one coach fired, Rick Pitino. We had an athletic director fired, Tom Jurich. I believe there's one player right now who's sitting out. Everybody said this is a widespread problem. Yeah. We heard a number of schools implicated. We heard a number of players, a number of coaches implicated at the trial and in other revelations. But not much has happened in terms of, I think, tangible effect. Why is that, and what's your reaction?
Well, specifically at the university level,
yes.
Right? Yeah, and I agree with that. I think, and again, I don't know the specifics of the different cases or accusations, but I do think many of us are probably a little surprised at the university level there hasn't maybe been more disciplinary measures. Now, is that coming, given there is pending legal stuff going on and cases and all of that? Maybe so, but I think, yeah, as a profession, probably coaches look and go a little bit and say, "Wow, that's interesting." Maybe there should be some more ineligible guys. But I sense that is coming.
Yeah. Okay. How much attention did you pay to the trial?
I did. It was. I checked in on it maybe every other day. Just to to really be plugged into it. I think it was a little bit riveting. It was dramatic from that standpoint, and to be educated on it and to try and understand more about it. And I don't think anything came out of there that, being in the business 30 years where I said, wow, that's shocking. It's like, we have had this underworld, we've had this market that's just existed. Yeah. You talk about things improving. The one thing that hopefully can help us is, I do believe the shoe companies are backing up a little bit after the explosion that has happened, certainly with Adidas and they have agreed to some transparency with us, as suggested by Condoleezza Rice's commission. If we can get them to just back it up a little bit and help us, I feel maybe it's a start.
Yeah. Okay. Do you sense, if you are out recruiting or in the climate now, is it changed at all in a year? I mean, or is the same people involved, the same middlemen, the same runners, all that? Are they all still there, or is that changed?
I think it's changing. Yeah. I really do. I think that was a major explosion 14 months ago. I think there's a little swing for the good, and we got to keep the heat on with some of the rules and some of the different things that Rice's commission has suggested. And some of them are going to be trial and error too, I think. We're going to have to try them for a year or two and say, you know what, I don't know if we like that. Let's adjust. But I think we're going to be in that window maybe for the next 5 to 10 years to do that. But no, I think there's been a step back a little bit. I really do.
Okay. How do you handle situations? You have contract security, you've got a good job, but situations where things are getting weird on the recruiting front, and then if you see things that you don't want to be involved in, do you turn schools in? How do you handle those?
Yeah. We've been fortunate, in my 20 years out there, we really haven't been put in any positions where deals were really being asked to be done. Mm-hmm. Have you shied away from certain recruiting situations because it just didn't feel right? Yes. Yeah. That's probably not going to be a fit, or there are some red flags on that. I think a lot of coaches, I think most of our coaches do that. Yeah. I really do. Mm-hmm. I believe the majority of our coaches say, that one doesn't feel right. I really firmly believe that about the majority of our coaches. So you've kind of shied away from it. We've not been a profession that have turned each other in. Yeah, but the climate. The climate has been such of the wild, wild west. Mm-hmm. I sense that will probably change. I sense that could change and will change in the midst of the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the things that's helped perpetuate the underworld is the fact that it's kind of just been tolerated. Some people may not engage in it, but they don't necessarily do anything.
No, there's no question. I mean, and I think I've certainly been one like, well, I'm not touching that one, and let's just run our business and do all that. But I do think, I know one of the things, one of the key pieces of the Rice Commission was stronger enforcement and stronger penalties. And, when some of those hard hits come, I think that's going to help across the board.
Yeah. Mark Emmert, we were talking to him out in the hallway briefly after his session up here. One of the things he was asked, obviously, is, how quickly can the NCAA act on some of the things that have come out in the trial and from the FBI? And hey, he said they're going as fast as they can, but it doesn't mean necessarily by the NCAA tournament they're going to have things taken care of. Would it be damaging for the sport if some of the schools that have been implicated in this end up at the Final Four, end up cutting down nets?
I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think it has to, and I was interested to hear that because I wondered how Mark answered that. Mm-hmm. I think it has to run its course, Pat, the way it's supposed to run its course. And certainly we have read all the implications and accusations, but we don't have all the information of what's going on. And so I think we're all understand we're going to have to be pretty patient with this. Yeah. And it's going to take time to probably level penalties. And then it's going to take time for us to figure out what is the new template, for recruiting. And we're going to try some stuff starting this spring and summer, and I think there's some new exciting stuff that's going to happen. And is it going to be the be-all, end-all 5 years from now? Maybe not. But I think we've started something here that's going to be interesting and it's going to help.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think? It seems inevitable we are going to get a reduced age limit and thus end the so-called one and done era. What do you think that effect will be?
That's great. I mean, these young phenoms, if they're good enough to go, let them go. I think that's a good thing, and that's not a big number of young people. But I think I would think the majority of coaches are, because a majority of coaches don't deal with it, and so if you have a young freak of nature phenom that can go, just go. Yeah. But it'd be great if we could, they talk about the baseball rule. We're not going to get that. We're not going to get that. But God, if you could have a young man 2 years on a campus, that certainly would be an improvement. You can get a lot done with a young man in 2 years on a campus.
Yeah, and they can make a little more meaningful progress toward a degree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Increased agent involvement. Do you see that happening, and will that be a problem?
Well, I mean, we've got to try and right now it's been us against them. Yeah. Everybody said, "Oh my God, we're going to invite." We got to try something here because it's pretty much been us against them, and so can we bring them to the table? So we can at least have some conversation. So I do think that is a step in the right direction because it's been an all-out battle and it's been deceptive and I'm always worried about that. And I'm always talking to our juniors and seniors, is anybody bothering, agents, do you need me to help you? And so if we can at least get them in the loop, we can maybe manage the thing a little better.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as you said, that's been around. And have you been able to win the battle, I guess, as you said, with agents as far as...
Not all the time. Yeah. I mean, what do you see? A battle for your kids' hearts and minds every day. Yeah. And many times, those that are NBA prospects have relationships and are communicating with an agent, during that last year of eligibility. And so, I've won... As I got to be a more experienced coach, I've won more of them. Mm-hmm. When I was a younger head coach, I was getting my butt kicked.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't know how to manage it as well, and I learned the hard way. Yep. And it wasn't because I had bad kids. It's just the climate and the dynamic and the dream of getting to and somebody else in their ear, and so the whole aspect of getting the agents in the room at least here, where we can look them in the eye and there's some communication, I really think it's a step in the right direction because it's been all hiding, right? Yeah. Before that.
Sure. Name, image, likeness. Should Jerian Grant, Pat Connaughton, Bonzie Colson have been able to get a cut from their jerseys that are sold at the bookstore?
I think that is a step in the right direction. I do. Now, I tell you what, I've heard my AD talk. I don't know how the heck we do this thing. Right. I mean, this sounds really complicated, and that's probably a good question for Bob Bowlesby and Mark. I don't know how we do it, but I do think that would be another way of helping a young person out, financially. I mean, cost of attendance, they're doing pretty good now. These guys they're doing pretty good. I mean, and in the summer now, the old days of the summer job, going home, the guys are in summer school and they got their room and board check, and it's great and it's awesome and it should be like that, but they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I agree that student athletes are not perhaps as destitute as some people want to simplify it and portray it.
No question. And we can give them more than bagels now.
You can give them the cream cheese and the bagel. That's big. couple other things here. Given your time at Duke, what was the biggest thing you took from Mike Krzyzewski, and are you surprised to see his evolution to as many one and done players as he's had?
Well, it is amazing, philosophically, when I was there, it was 4-year guys. Yeah. Of course, it's hard to think that a Grant Hill and a Leitner and a Bobby Hurley all stayed 4 years. If it was now, they wouldn't stay 4 years, but they did back then. Mike's been great about evolving and changing with the times. And I think the biggest thing, what was great when I went down there and I had 8 years with him, he let me get my hands on everything and really prepared me for being a head coach when I went to Delaware in 1995. But, the whole theme of like competing every day and even in the off season and recruiting and marketing and how you market your program and how you sell your program, he really is good. And I tip my hat to him because, getting up there in age, he's still got it. He's still got an edge, and they are doing it with elite talent, and they're a heck of a group this year. I'm glad we only play them once. We don't repeat them.
You play them in Cameron or at home?
No, they come to us.
Okay.
They come to us in January.
How much longer is he going to go?
He may outlast me and all of us. The guy's unbelievable. He's still, I really respect the fact that, at his age, he still has that edge. Yeah. And I tip my hat to him for that. But I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon, especially that they keep recruiting like that.
Right. A couple of just personal ones here for you. What's the best team you had, and what made it the best team you've had?
That 2015 team that won the ACC championship was a neat group, and you mentioned Jaron Grant and Pat Connaughton, two seniors that kind of helped me run the team and took ownership of the group. And to win an ACC championship on Tobacco Road, going through Duke and Carolina, was a great memory for us and a great achievement for our program. But other than this year with all these young guys, I've always had a bunch of juniors and seniors that have helped me run the team and have taken ownership of the group. And that is so fun to witness as the leader when your captains are managing the locker room and managing the young guys. And it's really a neat thing to see.
Yeah. Best team you played against or have seen in college basketball?
Well, the regional final in 2015 with Kentucky and Cleveland, which, that team, when I think back, there was some clips on the other day on something on ESPN of that Kentucky team and the bodies they had. And obviously they're all playing in the NBA now, but we played them right to the wire in Cleveland. But that was an amazingly gifted group to play against.
How did you guys almost beat them?
We were older.
Yeah.
We controlled the tempo. We were smart. That team was a smart team, an old team, and we had nothing to lose. Yeah. We had nothing to lose and just couldn't quite finish it.
Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Brey.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Coach Brey, thank you for joining us, and Pat, thank you for conducting the interview. Great way to get into our mid-morning break. We're going to go to our break hosted by Pat Yolen. Let's be back here at 10:50 for our student-athlete discussion with our moderator, Jack Forde. We'll see you back here at 10:50.